Hello, and on today's video we're going to cover off virtualization. Now I've spoke about virtualization previously, mostly around using Proxmox as a virtualization host. Now not everybody's always got a second device or the main device they actually want to use to set up Proxmox for a virtualization host, for example. They might only have one individual device in their house. So is virtualization still possible? The answer is absolutely. Now I generally would use a tool such as VirtualBox, which is what we're going to talk about today, to do that virtualization technique. Now, there's a couple of things that we need to make sure that we do to make sure one, virtualization is one, supported on your system, two, it's enabled, and three, obviously you pretty much understood the kind of requirements around virtualization. So i.e. you're going to start sharing the resources inside your current setup with your virtualization host. So obviously if you've only got 8 gigs of RAM in your system, starting to then try to apply 4 or 5 gig etc. to that host or to the client on that host is not going to help you. So I would generally have some kind of minimum requirements that you'd set yourself. I think if you're ever going to do virtualization, a kind of nice sweet spot in your own machine is at least 16 gig. You're going to want a multi-core processor for obvious reasons, and obviously a little bit of storage that you can share with VirtualBox. Now today we're going to cover off how to install VirtualBox. It's really straightforward and simple. One, how to turn on virtualization if you haven't already, and just to have a quick skim around the kind of features of VirtualBox, because it is quite a simple tool. I don't want to do a massive video on it. The idea is just to give you a nice simple introduction. So let's crack on. Okay, so let's talk about installing VirtualBox. So I've already downloaded it, and if you need to see where that comes from, basically on their website. So when you go to VirtualBox, depending on what you search, if you search using Bing, you obviously get the Microsoft version first, which they talk about how it can be embedded in Azure, which it absolutely can. If not, you need to go to virtualbox.org. Once there, you get prompted with a nice download VirtualBox. At the time of print, 7.0. If not, it'll be a slightly higher version. You've got all these options, so you can basically pick up the Windows host, Mac OS, Intel, Linux distribution version, Solaris host, Solaris 11 IPS hosts. All simple to download. Basically, the case of just downloading it. Now, when it comes to installing it on Windows, for example, let's just fire this up. You'll get the normal welcome to Oracle. Now, it is built by Oracle, so don't be aware. Don't be afraid of that. That is who's actually owns the VirtualBox platform. It's completely open source. Now, you can go in and turn off various bits on here. It's up to you what you want to do, but basically if you know the way that Windows works, you can basically click on this and say entire features will be installed or will be installed or not be installed, so you've got those options. It's worth just having it all there. You will get a warning to say it will disconnect any networking functionality potentially when it runs. We'll see if it actually does with mine. And it'll also pick up any missing dependencies, so Python core and Win32 API. It'll go away and install those. So let's just keep an eye on my network. Does it flinch? Don't think it actually does. And then we've got the option to start Oracle VM after installation. So let's do that. Let's get ourselves up and running. So this is how it looks. Now there's one I'd already installed here. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But what I might do is go and then now install or create another VM. And I'll kind of show you how those work. Now, your VMs will be populated down here. So you see this is one I've made earlier with Pop OS, various little settings that are set there. What I will do though is create a new one. Now my new one will be called just Ubuntu. And what we'll do is use an ISO image. Now it's really simple. Just I'll go in and find, let's pick live server. So this is basically going to pick 2204 and pull that down. Now you'll notice it does pre-populate these. You can change that if you don't want that. It's go in expert mode and arrange that a little bit. However, what we're going to do is just click next. It will ask you to set up an account on this one. So we'll keep it as that because I'm not going to keep it, to be honest. So it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And then just set up the amount of memory. So what we'll do is give it 8 gig and 4 CPUs. Now what you need to bear in mind is obviously you can see the red scaling. So if I started to put up here, then I'd be using pretty much all my system resources. It's keen to note that these do share. And obviously from a processor point of view, similar thing. So basically it's looking at the total number of threads available. So we'll keep it as just 4 for now. The virtual hard disk, how this works is basically you've got the option to do a ballooning device, so without pre-allocating the full size, or you can pre-allocate. Now certain OSs will require some kind of pre-allocation. I believe anything Microsoft will. However, if you're using any kind of Linux distro, you can absolutely leave this off. I've never tried it with Windows, but I'll be honest, I don't think it would like particularly. Having that, I always find that generally Windows, particularly when you're doing Proxmox, for example, likes to pre-allocate. So we'll just keep it as that for now and literally click finish. Now you'll notice both of these are powered off and you'll see this powering VM up. Now what it's going to do is power up that latest one for me. You will see it's quite small at this point. So what we can do is view and go into scaled mode. Now it says host C. Host C, I believe, I'd have to confirm, but I think it's Windows and C. You can change what the host key is as well, so if you need to do that. But what we'll do is make it scaled mode, because if I use scaled mode, what I can do then is just drag it to the size I want it. So you'll notice if anybody's ever installed Ubuntu before, you can get rid of this little auto capture keyboard commands if you wanted. But this is ready to go. And just to prove I'm not making this up, literally a case of going English UK, and it's asking me if I want to update the installer. It can do that for me. So that'll run off and do what I need it to do. Now I'm not going to go through the whole video because let's be honest, you guys have probably installed Ubuntu a load of times now. But you can kind of see at least a little bit about what I'm doing, how it's going about doing stuff, and it's all doing this live and I can carry on working. So now the great part about VirtualBox is that it's quite an easy tool to use. So if you compare it to others, when you're comparing it to say the likes of Proxmox, which need a lot more configuration, this is pretty much out the box ready to go in Windows. Now the only things you need to bear in mind is that you need to have virtualization technology enabled, and to do that always check first. It's basically looking at your task manager. So to look at Task Manager, you can do it several ways. There are some shortcuts, but if you're not sure what the shortcuts are, which they elude me at the moment, I will stick them in the description. What you can do is go into here and then click on Performance, CPU, and you can see there Virtualization is enabled. Now to enable on many different devices, they pretty much go as follows. And it can be a mixture or combination of those. That's all done. We'll literally go done, 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 done. Test, 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 test. And obviously this is not going to stay. And no, we're not going to use Ubuntu Pro. We can enable SSH if we want. And then we'll click done and it will run off and install. And that's pretty much it. That is how to use VirtualBox to virtualize anything. Now some of the great things you could do is obviously you could virtualize Kali Linux if you wanted to do a bit of hacking or ethical hacking, or a little bit of penetration testing, etc. Or if you just wanted to try a Linux distro out, so like I'm doing here, you can see obviously in my other window I've got a Pop OS distro running in there. So it's a good way to test the latest Linux distros as they come out. You can actually install Mac OS this way as well. And you can run these in full screen modes as well, so that's the beauty of it. So you can always have it like, and multi-windows mode, so you can have it like that is your actual machine you're working on. So yeah, that's just a brief overview on how to use VirtualBox. I'll leave you with my closing thoughts. So there we are, we've covered off the use of VirtualBox for virtualization. Now I tend to use this for a quick test of whether I want to put up a new Linux distro. Maybe I want to try out Mac OS on my Windows machine. Yes, it can be done. Or I just want to do something a little bit practical to spin up some services quickly just to prove if something works or not. It's actually really useful, I suppose, if you do YouTube videos as well, because you can kind of spin it up on your own machine rather than connecting in and various other bits. So you can kind of virtualize and do some testing before actually rolling it out to production. Now it is open source software, so it is completely free. Obviously this can be done other ways. You can do it with Hyper-V, ESX, EXXI, obviously Proxmox, which I've covered more than enough, or more than one occasion so far on this channel. But just for doing something quick and easy, I always recommend VirtualBox. It can be run on multiple OSs, so stuff as Windows, Linux and Mac, which pretty much covers them all really, doesn't it, when you think about it. But what a fantastic product to just spin up, get going and do some testing. So if you have liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.